In this video, we're going to look at how you can put files and folders into your Blackboard course site. Both are really important for getting information and course materials to students. Files will let you put any number of different files in your course for your students. So that could be readings, it could be worksheets, it could be timelines that they have to follow through, any number of different things. If you have it in a file, you can put it into your Blackboard for students to access. Folders are really helpful if you are dealing with a fair amount of content, because folders are a great way to organize things for students. Using an organization system helps to make it that much easier for students to find what they're looking for easily, and helps to keep your Blackboard course site that little bit more sort of neat and tidy. So let's first have a look at how you can set up folders in a Blackboard course site. Now, technically, you can put folders into any content area in Blackboard. So that might be your course information, your course documents, your assignments, anything like that. In this case, because it is fairly self-explanatory for students and something that is frequently used across the college, I'm going to put my weekly course materials into course documents. Once I'm in course documents, I can build a folder. To build a folder, I'm just going to come up here to build content, and then I'm going to choose the content folder option. So given that this is my first week of this class, I'm going to call it week 1, introduction. And it's generally a nice thing to give students some description of what's in that folder. So I'm going to use the text box here to give them a little bit of information about what we're going to be doing. So we'll say, this is your week 1 content, which will help to introduce you to the course. And I can go on from there, but that is very basic and very brief, and enough for right now. Now, I do have some options with this folder. If I wanted to, I could actually attach files to this folder. I could put in an image if I wanted to, but because I'm using the folder as a container for a number of different course things, I'm not going to put a lot here. I'm just going to put my description. Then when I have done that, I do have a couple other options that it is helpful to know about. The default here is that my students will get to see this folder, which is good. I would like it that way. I do have the option to turn on tracking number of views, which will give a general overview of how many students have accessed this particular folder. But the piece that's really useful to know about is this option to select date and time restrictions. So if you are thinking about getting a range of content ready to go for your students, say you wanted to get all of your weekly folders set up ahead of time, you could do that. And what this option will let you do is it will let you control when those folders become available to students. And it will also control everything that sits within those folders. So if, for instance, I wanted to set up all of those weeks ahead of time, but I wanted my students to follow a fairly regular schedule, and I didn't want them to, say, be able to access week 5 content when we're still in week 1, I can control the availability and use that as a way to let the folders be visible at a specific point in time. Now, pretty much across the board, we would recommend that even if you constrain the date that the folders become available to students, that once those folders are available, they're always available to students. So we generally don't recommend controlling the close date on the folders, just because we want students to have consistent and constant access to the things that have already happened in the class so that they can review whenever they need to. So whenever I have that set up and ready to go, I can click on Submit, and that is going to make my folder for me. Now that I have my folder set up, I can start to put some content into it. If I click directly on the folder name, it's going to take me into that folder. And once I'm in the folder, I can see that I have the same options that I did before. So everything that I could have put content-wise or assessment-wise into course documents, I can put into a folder within course documents. Now, if I wanted to put some materials here for my students, I would once again come up here to build content. A lot of the building that I tend to do in Blackboard is based on the item, because the item allows for a lot of flexibility and also allows for a description that can be useful for students in terms of telling them what something is, why it's meaningful, and what they should pay attention to. So for my class, I'm going to put an item here. And in this case, I know that I have some PowerPoint slides, so I'm going to tell them that I want them to read, and that these are my slides for the week. Now, to actually attach the slides, you can see that you've got this text box here, and there's a lot that you can do with that. So, as I mentioned, I like to give a little description. So, please review these week 1 slides and pay particular attention to some of the questions that are asked throughout. We'll be revisiting them this week. So you can put as much description there as you like. And then to actually attach the things that you want students to have access to, there are 2 different ways that you can do that. You have an option right up here. So if I come to my text box, there should be a button there called Add Content that is a plus sign inside of a circle. Now, if you don't see that, it might be because your text box is minimized. And if you come up here to the top right, you'll see that if you do have this sort of minimal view with only a few buttons, you can press this button over here with the ellipsis, which is the More button, which will give you more options. And then if I come down here to this button and choose that, it's going to give me some options for adding content. So if I have these files, say, saved on my computer, I can choose to insert local files, which is going to let me browse my computer just like I normally would. And then I can choose the file that I want. In this case, I know it's these slides. And then if I click on Open, it's going to put the slides here. Now, I do have some other options there too. So if I go back to Add Content, if I didn't have those files saved on my computer, I do also have the option to insert from a cloud service. Now, this does tend to involve having to sign in initially, but if you are using something like OneDrive, OneDrive for Business, Dropbox, or Google Drive, those are all options that you will have available to here as well. So those are handy to know about. The other option that you have available to you is there's a whole section down here as well for attachments. So if you did want to put the attachments in a slightly different place, you can come down here, you can browse local files, once again, just as you normally would, choose what you want, click on Open, and then when you've got everything ready to go, click on Submit, and you can see that your files are there and ready for your students. This approach will work for just about any type of content that you might want to make available to students in your class. So if I come back to Build Content, and once again choose Item, I can put something different in here if I wanted to. So let's say, for instance, that I had an image that I wanted to share with my students. So I might tell them that I have something that I want them to view, just because I like to be consistent in the kind of wording that I use. And this is an underwater basket weaving image. And I could once again give them a description. In this image, you'll see a diver engaged in underwater basket weaving. And if I come back to that Add Content button once more and go to Insert Local Files, I can grab an image that I have ready to go, click on Open, and that will show up in my course. Now, if you are using this to put images in, one thing that's really important from an accessibility standpoint is alternative text, which is useful for anyone who uses a screen reader to give them some information about what they're seeing in an image. So if I click, or if I right-click on this image, I can choose image, and that's going to let me put in some alternative text. And in this case, we have a diver in a wetsuit weaving a basket underwater. And I can click on Save to keep that attached. And my image is there. And this approach will work for any number of other file types. So if you had a Word document that you wanted to attach for your students that was a worksheet for them to fill out or some questions to answer for the week, you can use the Add Content button for that. If there was an Excel spreadsheet that they needed access to, or even that they needed to be able to work on, you could provide it to them that way. You can use it for any number of images, for audio files. There are lots of different ways to use this. And again, it's always under that Add Content button. So once I have this ready to go, I can click on Submit, and whatever I have put in there will now be available to my students.